Have they all been reborn? Is it strange to have white moonlight and green plums? Introduction. Jiang Tong, who was kicked back to before the big fire in the summer of 2007, has set 3 goals for himself. 1. Regrets that prevent the occurrence of previous life. 2. Utilize the advantage of rebirth to earn him a wave of money first. 3. If possible, by the way, it seems like it's not bad to have a relationship that I haven't experienced in my previous life. Chapter 1. A rebirth without Nirvana. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Jiang Tong has always felt that her life is full of regrets. In the summer of early 2007, a big fire not only caused him to lose both parents, but also left a mark on his right face that ran through his entire face. My grandmother, who used to walk trembling, also moved from the countryside to the city to take care of his daily life. Occasionally, Jiang Tong would also joke with others, saying that he was particularly like the little boy with lightning scars on his head, and maybe even a certain male lead. The lightning scar left by fate on oneself is just a bit too big. Although life is full of changes, Jiang Tong did not become decadent because he always felt that he was carrying the weight of those who lost their lives in the Great Fire. He is like a living record of that Great Fire. Since that's the case, he will live a more exciting life than others. In his 5th year of college graduation, Jiang Tong, who had achieved some success in a company through his own efforts, drove home late at night after work and was thinking about his next day's work plan. He did not notice the abandoned dump truck that ran a red light out of control. With a rapid collision sound, Jiang Tong's consciousness also fell into darkness. Every time. Even if I'm very injured, I won't shed tears. Listening to the leisurely female voice in her ears, Jiang Tong looked at the silver-white machine in her hand, which should be an MP3 player, and felt a bit dazed for a moment. Why is this thing so similar to the gift my dad gave me when I got into a key high school? When I first received it, I was still happy for a long time. I used it every night to listen to music and sleep. Why do I hold this thing in my hand? As Jiang Tong's fingers pressed down, the originally pitch-black screen was awakened. A few lines of numbers are displayed. Jiang Tong's heart also started beating uncontrollably and rapidly. August 12, 2007 23.15.19, how is this day? Surprised, Jiang Tong immediately sat up from the bed. Through the moonlight shining through the window, Jiang Tong could see the surrounding scenery clearly. No mistake, the familiar cartoon character sticker on the bedside. And a few little comic books stacked on some old desks. This is my bedroom before high school. What's going on? Have you been reborn? Jiang Tong, who had reacted, immediately flipped over and ran out of the bedroom. I have read the news about the fire more than 100 times in my past life. According to the newspaper report at that time, the start time of the fire should be around 11 o'clock. Within just half an hour, the fire quickly spread to the entire floor. The specific reason seems to be due to a gas tank leakage in a household on the 2nd floor, combined with aging electronic circuits. And because at this time, many people have already fallen asleep and rested, which leads to many people not being able to react in the first place. This is also one of the main reasons for causing significant casualties. And my home is on the 5th floor. Because the fire is spreading from bottom to top, there is basically no chance for the 5th and 6th floors of the top to escape after discovering the fire. If it weren't for one of the firefighters rushing into the fire to save himself, he might have died in that fire. As expected, with the living room door opened, Jiang Tong immediately smelled a burnt smell coming from the other side of the corridor. Dad! Mom! Wake up quickly! It's on fire! While shouting loudly to her sleeping parents in the master bedroom, Jiang Tong rushed into her own bathroom. What's going on? Xiao Tong, what were you just saying? The first one to come out was Zhang's father, who was bare-armed and spoke in a clearly panicked tone. As soon as he came out, he saw Jiang Tong in the bathroom turning on all the faucets and soaking all the washing towels on the shelf inside. "Dad! There's a fire downstairs, hurry up and call the fire alarm. Remember to clearly state the address." Jiang Tongyu flies quickly and strives to keep her voice steady. "Also, hurry down with your mother. The fire is very big, so don't bring those valuable items. Life is more important. Also, remember to cover your mouth and nose with these damp cloths later. When you go down, shout louder and wake up all the neighbors." "Ah. Okay. I got it." Jiang's father, who had just woken up, also had some confusion in his mind. Fortunately, what Jiang Tong said was very clear, and he quickly realized it. However, just as he was about to go back and call the police with his phone, he saw Jiang Tong picking up a wet towel and rushing out. "Wait. Where are you going? Aren't you coming down with us? There are still 4 households on the 6th floor, I need to go wake them up." Jiang Tong too did not return either. For him now, time is too precious to waste on explaining. "I'll be fine soon, you guys go down first." Seeing his own son disappear outside the door, Jiang's father gritted his teeth, quickly returned to the master bedroom, and his wife had already woken up. Jiang's father also quickly recounted the current situation. In no time, the couple's shouts rang out in the hallway. "It's on fire. Big guy, wake up quickly. Old Sue. Old Sue. Hurry up. Hurry up, don't think about bringing anything, let's go down first before we talk." Meanwhile, Jiang Tong, who was on the 6th floor, had already successfully called out the people of the other 3 households, except for the door of room 604, which he knocked on but no one answered. At this moment, the uncle next door also noticed this scene and shouted at him. "Xiao Jiang, stop knocking. Your Aunt Bai is working overtime at work today, so there shouldn't be anyone at home now." "Aunt Bai." Upon hearing these words, a tearful and heart-wrenching woman's face flashed through Jiang Tong's mind. "No. There's someone in her family. Her daughter should still be inside." Jiang Tong was exceptionally confident at this moment. "Uncle Li, come and help me, let's both smash open this door." Really, Uncle Li heard this and quickly came over to help. Fortunately, installing wooden doors in this old community is not particularly solid. As soon as the door was knocked open, Jiang Tong rushed into the bedroom. As expected, as soon as I opened the door, I saw a girl of the same age sleeping soundly in bed. It seems that because there was too much noise when the door opened, the girl finally woke up from her sleep. Watching the other person reach out and take off 2 things that seemed to be earplugs from their ears, Jiang Tong couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. Good guy, no wonder I didn't respond even when I shouted. Ignoring the bewildered to frightened gaze of the other person, Jiang Tong lifted the girl from the bed and took the wet towel that Uncle Li had brought from the bathroom. "It's on fire. Hurry up and go downstairs." In a few minutes, a large, dark crowd gathered downstairs in the community. Zhaoshuyuan.com. The flickering flames also dyed half of the sky red. Jiang Tong was sitting by the flower bed, panting heavily. Several fully armed firefighters were conducting firefighting operations in an orderly manner under the command of a captain-like character. Jiang Tong silently watched this scene from the side. In this life, firefighters have come much faster than last time, so there shouldn't be so many casualties, right? Well. Thank you. A soft and sticky voice interrupted Jiang Tong's thinking. Looking sideways, it was the girl from earlier. The originally smooth long hair was slightly curled, and the white and tender face was also blackened by the smoke and dust. I don't know if it was caused by the flames, but Jiang Tong always felt that the other person's face was a bit red. "Can you release your hand first?" "Ah." Jiang Tong froze for a moment before realizing the softness in his right hand. "Sorry, I didn't notice earlier." Jiang Tong, who had reacted, immediately released the opponent's hand. I just pulled the other person up and ran away, but I didn't even notice these things. No, it's okay. The girl's cheeks turned even redder, and then a hint of curiosity appeared. I always feel that the boy in front of me, who is about the same age as me, is unusually calm, which is completely different from the behavior of those who have survived the disaster around me. And I don't know if it's an illusion. She always felt a hint of happiness on the boy in front of her. Are you? What are you looking at? Under the glow of the fire, a brilliant smile suddenly appeared on Jiang Tong's face, which was also slightly dark from the smoke. Watching a rebirth without experiencing Nirvana. Chapter 2. Does he not enjoy earning more money? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Today's sunrise feels even warmer than before. In the hotel bathroom, Jiang Tong was staring blankly at his face in the mirror. Because of the scar that ran through the entire right face, Jiang Tong rarely looked at his face like this. Tisk, maybe in this lifetime, you can go and play on the school draft list. Jiang Tong looked at herself in the mirror and muttered to herself, then turned around and left the bathroom. Last night, except for a few people who were injured while going downstairs, the ambulance rushed directly to the hospital. Most of the remaining people went home to pick up some valuable items and stayed at the nearby hotel for a few nights. One reason is that it seems that someone needs to be sent to re-inspect the circuit and find the cause of the fire. On the other hand, it is because the burned areas also need to be renovated. At this moment, the entrance of the room where Jiang Tong and his family were located was very lively. Hey! What are you doing, Lao Su? Why not? You have to take it, this time it's really thanks to your family, otherwise I don't know what the situation would have turned into at that time. At the hotel room door, Jiang Shufeng was pulling with a middle-aged man. Jiang Tong leaned against the door and watched the scene with great interest. Because it was Jiang Tong's family who discovered the fire last night and promptly notified everyone of the cause, so since this morning, many people have come to thank you with gifts. Forget it, Uncle Su's family should be the fifth one. Dad, just accept it. Uncle Su is also kind-hearted. Jiang Tong couldn't bear to watch as the two of them were still tugging at each other. Hey! You're such a child. Following this step, Jiang's father also accepted the things sent by Lao Su, and of course, he didn't forget to say a few polite words. Okay, then Lao Su will come and buy some groceries in a few days. You can come to my house and have a drink. No problem. Lao Su smiled heartily and then turned his gaze to Jiang Tong on the side. Xiao Jiang, you also have a share. Come on, this is for you. Looking at the other person in front of me, I don't know where they pulled out the full set of High School 53, a big question mark slowly appeared on Jiang Tong's head. Uncle Su, how could you repay kindness with revenge? This is good, said Jiang's father, who was busy taking it over next to him. Okay, it seems that I won't be able to enjoy my high school life well in the future. Watching Uncle Su leave behind, Jiang Tong suddenly remembered that she had one more thing to do. By the way, Dad, can I go down for a while? What are you doing? Go downstairs for a stroll. I casually found an excuse to perfunctory my own father. Jiang Tong arrived at the lobby on the first floor of the hotel. He noticed several computers on the back of the lobby on the first floor when he checked in last night. It is probably for the convenience of customers checking things or for leisure time. I have finally been reborn. It's hard to justify not taking advantage of one's unpredictable advantage and doing something. Isn't he good at earning more money? Opening the computer with ease and familiarity, as the nostalgic background music drifted out, a blue progress bar appeared on the computer screen. Most computers in this era used XP systems, which gives Jiang Tong a sense of retro in his eyes today. Half an hour later. Jiang Tong looked at the computer screen in front of her and pondered. In his previous life, he somehow surfed the internet with high intensity, so he really knows a lot about the process of the internet. At present, the best outcome is to hire a group of people to do it themselves, but the problem is, I am just a prospective high school student now, who can I find? And the start-up funding is also an issue. Copying books. Although I was also a fan of novels back then, I read countless books. But when I was reading books back then, I only focused on enjoying myself. Who could really write down a complete book? This plan passes. Copying songs. Unfortunately, although I am somewhat of a Mac, I do not know how to compose music and do not have the means to sell it. This plan also passes. By the way, Jiang Tong's eyes suddenly lit up. How could I forget that person? With him around, many of my methods should be easy to implement. It seems that I have found a time to meet the other party. Hey! Xiao Jiang, why are you here? A voice came from the hotel gate. Jiang Tong looked up and saw a small face with delicate features. At this moment, the other person's lake-like eyes were carefully scrutinizing him. I didn't realize yesterday that this little girl looks pretty good. Oh no, I seem to be the same age as the other person now. Seemingly sensing Jiang Tong's gaze, the girl shifted her gaze slightly unnaturally and shrank behind her own mother. Watching the other person's movements, Jiang Tong couldn't help but chuckle and immediately turned his gaze to the woman next to him. The woman's face and the girl next to her have a face that is 7 or 8 times similar, more like a replica of the girl when she grows up. It's just that the dark circles under my eyes are a bit heavy, probably because I didn't rest well last night. Hello and bye. Taking the initiative to greet the woman in front of her, Jiang Tong smiled sincerely. The great fire in his past life not only took away his parents, but also his daughter who had just entered high school. Only Aunt Bai herself escaped the disaster because she worked overtime in the factory the day before. I still remember Bai Yi, who rushed back after hearing the news, fainted several times while crying at the scene. Later, when she was lying in the hospital recuperating, Aunt Bai also came to see her many times. So he has a deep impression of the other party. Just when I was discharged a few months later, the other person was no longer there. Because on the night of the start of high school, Aunt Bai finally couldn't bear the pain of losing her loved ones one after another, I chose to end my life in the room that had been painted with brand new white paint. A few days later, Jiang Tong, who was approached by the police, found out that the other party had donated all of his remaining inheritance to him. From that day on, Jiang Tong truly felt the things carried by himself. Zhaoshuyuan.com, Xiao Jiang, thank you very much. I was almost worried when I heard the news last night. Aunt Bai's face had an indescribable weariness, but her expression was filled with gratitude. I also heard from my maid and my neighbor Laoli that it was thanks to you last night that my daughter was rescued. Otherwise, there might be something wrong with this girl. Ran, why are you hiding behind? Come out and thank them. Don't be so polite, Aunt Bai. Jiang Tong waved his hand. It's actually a coincidence. Yesterday, I just saw Aunt Bai going upstairs with your daughter, which is why I found out there is still someone in your family. The girl behind her seemed to have finally mustered up her courage and walked out from behind her mother, with her red lips lightly parted and said, "Thank you." The 2 words, delicate mosquitoes and flies, seemed to have exhausted all the courage of the young girl. Take a look, this child. Looking at her own daughter who had shrunk back after speaking, Aunt Bai's expression was clearly somewhat helpless. Previously, it was inconvenient for me to take care of myself alone, and I also attended junior high school in my hometown, so it has always been with my grandparents. I didn't expect my personality to turn out like this. By the way, Xiao Jiang, did your father say that your high school was also Qingqing No. 1 high school? Aunt Bai seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked. Yes, the first year of high school starts this year. So in the future, you and my family Chioran will be classmates. I don't know if they are in the same class. Is that so? That's really a coincidence. Jiang Tong smiled at the girl who was clearly piqued by these words. By the way, my name is Jiang Tong, and you? By Chiron. Chapter 3. Is this really a high school student? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Watching the Bai family and daughter leave the hotel. Jiang Tong couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the table, which was clearly filled with many reference books and test papers. These people, why do they like to give these things so much? Especially when Jiang's father accepted these things, he was particularly happy. Judging from his posture, it was even more effective than giving him his favorite cigarette. By the way, Xiao Tong, is your Aunt Bai's daughter in the same high school as you? Su Xiaoyun, who was tidying up her clothes, seemed to suddenly think of something and asked her own son beside her. Well, I heard from Aunt Bai that she came here specifically because she got into Qingqing No. 1 high school. It seems like she used to live with her grandparents in the countryside. Upon hearing his mother's words, Jiang Tong casually replied. At this moment, he is picking and selecting the materials, categorizing them according to subjects, and preparing to self-study before the start of high school. At least in my past life, I also worked hard to get into this prestigious university, Jiangda, although he has forgotten a part now, as long as he is given some time, he is still very confident in learning high school knowledge well again. Oh, that's it. Su Xiaoyun nodded. If you encounter someone in school in the future, take care of them more. After all, your Aunt Bai even gave you a special red envelope this time. Jiang's father also agreed on the side. Indeed, your aunt's husband died early, and it's not easy to pull the child so big alone. At this time, most of the neighbors are still familiar with each other, and they usually visit other people's homes. Far from the situation in later generations where people may have lived for several years and have never seen the faces of their neighbors. So the people in the corridor are more or less aware of the situation at Aunt Bai's house. The people in the community still admire this independent woman who works 2 shifts and has a large family. I know, don't worry. Organizing all the materials at hand, Jiang Tong turned to look at her parents. By the way, Mom, I want to go to my uncle's house to play this afternoon. Why go to his house? Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyun immediately glanced at Jiang Tong with caution. Do you want to go to your uncle's house to play computer games? No. Jiang Tongdun, who was about to explain, suddenly got stuck. How to explain it? Saying you want your uncle to help you earn money. It's better to say that playing computer games is more convincing. Just take it for granted. You see, I have nothing to do at the hotel, and I still have half a month left from school. It's better to go to my uncle's place to play than to sneak into an internet cafe, right? If you dare to go to an internet cafe and break your leg. I rolled my eyes, but Su Xiaoyun still agreed with the other party's statement. Okay, I'll give your uncle a call. Should I take you over? No need, I'll just take the bus alone. Ding dong. Here we go, wait a moment. With the sound coming from inside, the door in front of me was opened. A man with a messy chicken coop head appeared in front of Jiang Tong. Uncle, long time no see. Fart, we just met at your graduation banquet last week. Su Rong gave his nephew a sideways glance, and his expression showed that I had already seen through you. Jiang Tong awkwardly scratched his head, realizing that he had not seen this uncle for several years, and instinctively said so. Who can remember they just met last week? Come on in, my sister told me. Ignoring his nephew's strange expression, Su Rong led him into the room. There is cola in the refrigerator. If you want to drink it, go get it yourself. I'll wait until I finish ordering this book. Okay. Taking out the cola from the refrigerator and opening it on her own, Jiang Tong slowly swayed behind Su Rong. On the screen is the current popular Warcraft, and Su Rong played a game of Nade. It seems that he is playing with his teammates. It's just that my uncle saves lives in the game, but outside the game, he keeps spitting out fragrance. I haven't had any free time since Jiang Tong came in. Damn it, why are you pulling so weird? Why are you always OT? Can you stop relying on your skills and dodge, DPS? Wipe, what NT stuff? Next time I'll play with you guys, I'm just a dog. After finishing the group notebook, Su Rong took the iced cola handed by Jiang Tong and took a strong sip. I finally felt some refreshing energy. Tell me what you're looking for. Oh, it's nothing, I just missed you and came to see you. To be honest. Su Rong's eyes rolled white as he listened. Hee hee. Jiang Tong gave a sneer. Actually, it's not much. I remember you had a notebook, right? Can you use it for me? So you're thinking about this. Su Rong knew clearly that the notebook he bought during his previous college years, after graduation, in order to facilitate my own gaming, I reconfigured a desktop computer, so that one was put aside there. At most occasionally I would take it out to watch a movie or something. Speaking of which, why do you suddenly remember this? Su Rong stood up to pick up the notebook that had been put away, and curiously asked. Last time I gave you a laptop to play with, you didn't want it. They said they couldn't play games and insisted on competing with me for the desktop. Jiang Tong scratched his head and explained. Today is not for playing games, it's mainly for searching for something. Oh. Although curious, Su Rong did not continue to inquire. Anyway, it's not just about competing with him for a desktop computer. Here, let's play by ourselves. After arranging for his nephew, Su Rong returned to his computer and picked up his headphones. Damn it, where are you guys? Hurry up, take advantage of the time and open your notebook again. This time, I'll touch the box. After another group meeting ended, Su Rong habitually looked at Jiang Tong sitting on the other side. When he saw the interface on his notebook clearly, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Do you want to buy a domain name? Su Rong's tone was clearly somewhat surprised. Yes. Jiang Tong too didn't lift his head either, calculating that the money in his hand was probably enough to buy a few. Due to being admitted to high school, I have received a lot of red envelopes this year, and with the scattered money I have saved up from childhood to adulthood, the total amount is almost 10,000. Of course, these were all stored by my own mother in a way that she kept on her behalf. She went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com just to reassure him, and they even applied for a bank card and deposited the money into it. So he secretly took out the card before going out. Why are you buying this thing? Are you planning to open a website? At this moment, Su Rong was no longer in a hurry to finish his book and sat next to his little nephew, asking curiously. Almost so. At this moment, Jiang Tong had already made a choice and was looking up at her own uncle. By the way, uncle, do me a favor. My card has not been activated for online payment. Can you help me buy it? I will go and withdraw the money for you later. Wait, you haven't said what you're going to do yet. When it comes to money, Su Rong is clearly a bit cautious. Although it doesn't cost much to buy a domain name, Jiang Tong's actions at this time have become increasingly confusing for him. How does a high school student like to tinker with these things? Shouldn't everyone be busy playing games and dating? When I was so old, I was still fishing in the rural river. Actually, I want to make a small game and give it a try. Jiang Tong didn't intend to hide it from his uncle, so he opened the drawing board of his notebook and began explaining to him. Look, I'm planning to create a web-based game called Hi Pie Farm. And the main operation of this game is planting and stealing. I heard you right, it's stealing other players' crops. And so on and so on. Listening to the high school student with a childish expression in front of him, he was talking incessantly. The prototype of the entire game gradually appeared in Su Rong's mind. However, the more he listened, the more frightened he became. Is this really a game that high school students can think of? Chapter 4. Do you want braised or spicy? You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Jiang Tong finished telling his uncle the entire game, the room fell into a state of calm. Is this the game you want to play? Su Rong looked at the content filling the entire laptop screen in front of him, and his gaze towards Jiang Tong was somewhat strange. Well, that's about it. After taking a sip of cola to moisten her throat, Jiang Tong gently shook the jar in her hand and listened to the sound of water splashing from the remaining liquid inside. However, although I say that, I still lack manpower to help me develop it. Currently, this thing is just a conceptual prototype. After saying these words, Jiang Tong pretended to casually glance at his own uncle. Good guy, I already know why you told me so much detail. As expected, upon hearing these words, Su Rong quickly reacted and couldn't help but roll his eyes. How did you know that I'm taking on this private job now, kid? I don't seem to have told you about this, did I? Oh, you said something at my graduation banquet last time, and I heard it nearby. Jiang Tong found an excuse and casually fooled him over. In fact, he didn't know if his uncle had mentioned this at the time. However, in my past life, when I was pushing glasses and changing cups with my uncle at the table, the other person had said a lot about me. As one of the few computer science college students in 2007, my uncle had just graduated with a love for games and joined a newly established gaming company. The company went bankrupt within 6 months, and the following companies also did the same. Without exception, they never lived for 3 months. At that time, my uncle, to describe it in one sentence, was like a dark lamp in the industry. In addition to some other reasons, feeling disheartened, my uncle gave up his job directly and relied on occasional extras with a few acquaintances to make a living. Otherwise, such a living person who stays at home every day playing games really doesn't need a source of income. You kid, you're here to catch me as a laborer. Su Rong couldn't help but laugh and curse. Okay, I'm really interested in the game you mentioned. I can help you with it, but the salary can't be lower. At most, I can offer you a friendly offer. No problem. After discussing some details, it was already over 5 o'clock in the blink of an eye. Alright, that's it for today. Let's eat first. Su Rong glanced at the clock on the wall, paused the church, and got up to walk towards the kitchen. I'll have to ask those acquaintances later to see who was responsible for the art department when I saw it. By the way, what would you like to eat tonight? Can you cook? Jiang Tong curiously followed the other person to the kitchen. You know how to make a fart, come on, do you want braised pork or spicy? Looking at the 2 buckets of instant noodles that the other person had just taken out of the cabinet, Jiang Tong couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, one should not have any expectations for squatting in a dead house. I opened the refrigerator next to me and took a look, maybe because the other person doesn't usually cook, so there aren't many things inside. A bag of a few ham sausages, along with a board of eggs, is probably used by Su Rongping to cook instant noodles. However, Jiang Tong unexpectedly discovered several fresh cucumbers inside. Alright, let me do it. Eating instant noodles all the time is not good for your health. Rolling up her sleeves, Jiang Tong skillfully began to process the ingredients. I'll use it in the kitchen. Can you help me find some rice? Can you do this? In my past life, I never thought about finding a partner because of the scar on my face. Because of this, he also gained a lot of free time. So in his spare time, besides exercising, he likes to study small things at home as a way to adjust his life. Among them, Jiang Tong is confident that he can easily handle some home-cooked dishes, even though he may not be able to cook large dishes. Do you still know how to cook? On one side, Su Rong curiously approached, feeling that his nephew was becoming increasingly incomprehensible. Firstly, there were creative game ideas, and now there is a seemingly proficient culinary skill. How do you feel like a child compared to others? In the next few days, Jiang Tong will almost visit his uncle's house every day. Although Ms. Su has some criticisms about the comparison, Jiang Tong takes the initiative to study for a period of time every night, and it doesn't seem like she's pretending, so she agrees to this. When I came out today, it was already past 7 o'clock, and the street lights on both sides of the road cast orange lights. There's no way, this uncle really treats himself like a cook. He, who never goes out much, even went to the market to buy some vegetables and put them in the refrigerator, waiting for him to cook them every night. But it's not his fault, after all, he can really eat hot food. Who would be willing to eat instant noodles every day? Sitting on the bus heading home, looking at the street lights outside the window moving backwards one after another, Jiang Tong's memory of this city is gradually recovering. It seems like I rarely come back after graduation. At this time, there were still many old houses in Qingqing that had not been demolished, and there was a sense of retro beauty under the orange street lights. Unfortunately, I don't have much money now. Otherwise, buying a few of them and waiting for demolition would be a good way to earn money. Now I have a few popular domain names on hand that I bought in advance, but they cannot be monetized for a while. Otherwise, it can actually solve one's current problem. Unconsciously, the bus arrived at the station, and Jiang Tong got off and walked towards his own community. Due to the attention of the superiors, the efficiency of the relevant departments is very high. They stayed in the hotel for 3 days and were informed that they could move back. When passing by the burnt pitch black second floor, a brand new layer of white paint had already been painted on it, and a faint smell could still be smelled in the entire hallway. "Mom, I'm back." Skillfully take out the key to open your own door. Jiang Tong, who was about to return to her room, suddenly saw a head protruding from the sofa in the living room, perhaps attracted by the sound of the door opening. "I am now looking towards this side." Their eyes met perfectly. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Looking at the unfamiliar girl in front of me. Jiang Tong left the door with some uncertainty and looked up again. The old nameplate on the door accurately wrote the 3 big characters, 502. I didn't walk at the wrong door, did I? "Son, you're back, just right." Su Xiaoyun happened to come out of the master bedroom door and greeted her son when she saw him. "Uncle Qiao and his family have just returned from their trip, and we are preparing to go to the card room downstairs to play for a while. You and Yi will play at home for a while." She draped her coat over her body and turned her head to remind the girl on the other side. Just play with Xiaotong at home and don't run around at night." "Good aunt." The girl behind the sofa responded, looking very obedient. With the clang of a door closing, Jiang Tong turned her head to look at the girl on the side. The girl also got up from the sofa at this moment, and the two of them looked at each other in this way. Jiang Tong also saw the other person's appearance clearly at this moment. A head of soft and long hair is exquisitely tied behind the head, converging into a lively high ponytail shape. The light pink chiffon dress perfectly highlights the beautiful figure of the girl. Looking down, there are a pair of smooth calves that extend from the hem of the skirt all the way to the black and red casual shoes, wrapped in a pair of white socks with pink edges. At this moment, those amber eyes were looking at him, with a hint of joy in their eyes, as if seeing a long-lost friend reunited. Looking at the young girl in front of her, she exuded a youthful aura unique to high school students. A vaguely memorable name gradually emerged in Jiang Tong's mind. Joey. Where is my gift in Chapter 5? You are listening at novelfull.audio. With the shout of Jiang Tong, he spoke out. The girl's eyes clearly lit up for a moment, but her tone was very dissatisfied. "Humph, I thought you didn't want to talk to me. I waited here specifically after hearing that he was coming back soon. What was that expression when I first entered the door?" No, I was just talking to my mom." Jiang Tong smiled incessantly on the surface, but her heart was somewhat uneasy. The Qiao Yi in front of me can be considered as his green plum in a sense. After all, the two families have always had a good relationship, and their primary and junior high schools have always been in the same school, and they have even become desk mates in the same elementary school. But in her previous life, it seemed like after the start of high school, Jiang Tong had lost the news of her green plum. Jiang Tong doesn't remember the specific process very clearly. I only remember that I had never seen each other in school. Now, thinking about it, maybe it's because they didn't get into the same high school. Moreover, after experiencing the fire, Jiang Tong devoted all her energy to studying and had hardly ever used her phone or internet in high school for 3 years. Joey gradually faded out of his life. I didn't expect to see each other again after being reborn, and Jiang Tong was still very happy. Long time no see, Joey. Jiang Tong smiled at the girl in front of her. Didn't you go out to play during the summer vacation? How was your time? Long time no see. Upon hearing Jiang Tong's words, Xiao Yi was stunned for a moment. Didn't she just go on a trip for about 10 days? But the girl quickly set aside this question. By the way, this time we went to Liancheng. The beach there is very crowded. The girl who was trying hard to depict the scene she saw while traveling to Jiang Tong looked very excited, with a fair finger constantly waving in the air. By the way, I also brought you a gift. At the end, as if thinking of something, Joey folded back to the sofa and took out a beautifully packaged box from a cute cartoon pink pig bag. Here, the gift I promised you before leaving. Do you have any more gifts? Jiang Tong was stunned for a moment and instinctively took what was in the other person's hand. In the hopeful gaze of the girl, Jiang Tong opened the box. What appeared in front of me was a transparent glass bottle. The bottom of the bottle is covered with soft white sand, and above it is a set of wooden sailboat models. The curved sail shape seems to be stirred by the wind and is ready to sail out at any time. The overall workmanship is very exquisite. Hey, what's wrong? Looking at Jiang Tong in front of him, he opened the gift in his hand as if he had been pinned there, and suddenly remained motionless. The girl's originally excited mood also fell, and she carefully waved her hand in front of Jiang Tong. Don't you like? Ah. Jiang Tong, who had come to her senses, realized that her actions had caused the other party to think too much, and quickly explained. No, I really like it. Humph, I thought you didn't like it. Look at you being silent for a long time. The relieved girl raised her proud chin, seeming to feel that her recent performance was somewhat inappropriate. She fiercely punched Jiang Tong, revealing 2 cute little tiger teeth. Even if I don't like you, I have to accept it. It took me a long time to choose it. No, I really like it. It seems that Jiang Tong's eyes softened a lot as she thought of the scene where a girl with difficulty in choosing a gift had been wandering around the gift store for a long time, and finally, under the impatient gaze of the boss, she chose this gift and asked the other party to package it. And he saw this gift in his last life. It was just delivered by express delivery to the hospital where I was at that time. He thought it was from the group of people who donated it to society at the time. As a survivor of the small fire, he received a lot of social attention at that time and received various things during his hospitalization. Except for some consumables, most of those things were collected well by him. I just didn't expect that one of them was given to him by Joey. However, Jiang Tong had some doubts at this moment. But why didn't Joey hand it over to him in person at that time? The place where the two of them live is not too far. Jiang Tong, who was thinking about the problem, suddenly saw an extra white and tender hand in front of him, facing upwards with the palm of his hand. What does this mean? Jiang Tong lifted her head and happened to see Xiao Yi looking at him with an expectant expression. By a stroke of fate, Jiang Tong instinctively placed his empty right hand on the other person's palm. And he gently pinched it. Xiao Yi was stunned by Jiang Tong's sudden provocation, and after a while, she reacted and viciously knocked off the hand that was causing trouble. What are you doing? Sigh. Isn't that what you meant? I thought you wanted me to see if you had gained weight after going out. How could you possibly have gained weight? Joey glared angrily at the boy who was clearly pretending to be foolish in front of her. Besides, shouldn't we pinch our stomachs to see if people have gained weight? There's no such thing as pinching our hands. No, we can't just pinch our stomachs casually. Oh, let me see if you have gained weight. Of course not, why do you always think I'll gain weight? Xiao Yi was a bit impatient and frustrated. She suddenly changed her tone and stared at Jiang Tong with a displeased expression when she went to the book garden www.zhaozhuiyuan.com. You probably didn't forget to prepare my birthday gift, want to get by. So it's a birthday gift. Finally, Jiang Tong understood the other party's purpose. At this moment, his mind was spinning and he did not change the topic this time. Of course I haven't forgotten. Wait a moment, I'll give it to you right away. Leaving the young girl whose ears had already been lightly pink, Jiang Tong quickly entered her bedroom. The embarrassed and distressed girl finally breathed a sigh of relief, trying to calm down some of the stirring emotions. She knew that Jiang Tong must have prepared the gift, because the other party had never missed a birthday gift for her in all these years. But this time she didn't receive it as soon as possible because she went on a trip with her parents. I just didn't expect this guy to suddenly become so bad after only a while of absence. Thinking of this, Joey unconsciously clenched her left hand. Jiang Tong also crawled out of her bedroom at this moment, holding a box wrapped in gift paper in her hand. He saw something in his room a few days ago while packing up, and he was still thinking about who it was meant for. Here, Joey, happy birthday. Handing the box in his hand to the girl in front of him, Jiang Tong also looked curiously at the girl's movements. After all, he was also curious about what he had prepared for the other party back then. After all, most of the previous things were left in that big fire. As the box was opened by Joey's nimble hands, the contents inside gradually revealed their original form. It is a pink pig-shaped night light. Chapter 6. How clever it is. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The rising summer vacation is a rare opportunity for students to stay up in bed. After all, there is no homework or endless tutoring classes to disturb you, which can allow you to experience a sufficient leisure vacation. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have been admitted to a good high school. It's time to get up. Oh, good. After waking up, Joey didn't immediately go to wash up, but instead took a photo of the newly added pink pig on the bedside table. Only then did he leave the bedroom satisfied. By the way, didn't you tell Xiaojiang that you also got into Qingqing No. 1 high school? At the dinner table, Xiao Zhenming seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked his daughter. Last night, Uncle Jiang and his team even asked me a question. Ah. Joey, who was originally a bit confused, suddenly regained consciousness with a nervous expression on her face. Dad, did you tell them? No. Xiao Zhenming glanced at his daughter. I was interrupted at the time, so I haven't said it yet. That's good. Joey breathed a sigh of relief and continued to focus on the breakfast in front of her. I haven't told him yet. I'm planning to leave him a surprise when the time comes. Don't rush to help him out. At the other end of the table, Xiao Zhenming and Lu Xuxian remained silent and just exchanged glances. Since returning from her trip, my own daughter has been knocking around and listening to when she will go to the Jiang family. This careful consideration cannot be concealed from the eyes of both of them. It seems time to find a time to have a good chat with her. Although the two of them didn't have any unpleasant feelings towards Jiang Tong, and the two families were also familiar, it wouldn't be unacceptable if they really became in-laws. But after all, the two children are still in high school, so it's better to pay a little attention. On the other side. At this moment, Jiang Tong was sitting on the back seat of his antique Jetta, with patches of rapeseed fields on both sides of the road, already over half a person tall. At first glance, everything was green and yellow, which was really beautiful. By the way, Xiao Tong, I have to go to the factory the day after tomorrow and have your mother accompany you to report on the start of school. Old Jiang in the front row turned his head while driving and said to his own son. My son is about to start school in 2 days, but due to a fire and the factory's leave coming up soon, the family is planning to take this opportunity to visit my grandmother who lives in the countryside. But we'll have to go back to the factory in the future. Otherwise, if we don't show our face over there, we'll find him in the factory who's not like him, and it'll be dangerous when we turn back to the conference. Okay. Jiang Tong, who was sitting behind, didn't take it seriously and casually agreed. In fact, it's not a problem to go alone when school starts, but parents are worried and insist on coming alone to follow. Speaking of which, the food manufacturing factory that Lao Jiang is currently working for seems to have developed quite well in the future. Since nothing happened to Lao Jiang in this life, it shouldn't be a big problem to follow the factory. After all, he is still a small leader. Other Jiang Tong doesn't have much big ideas, after all, that's a field he's not very familiar with. At most, he can give some advice from the perspective of future generations. The group quickly arrived at Grandma's house, and the distance was not really far, about a few dozen kilometers. Even at Lao Jiang's usual steady speed, it only took about 40 to 50 minutes to get there. "Grandma, I'm coming to see you." Just got off the car, Jiang Tong took the initiative to take down the things she had bought on the way and some health supplements from the back seat, and shouted into the room. "Hey! Xiao Tong, you guys are here." The trembling grandmother walked out of the inner room, laughing uncontrollably. In fact, my grandmother's body is still very strong. It's just that when she was young, she accidentally fell and injured her leg while walking in the field, which led to the root cause of her difficulty walking. However, despite this, my grandmother, who had always disliked going out in her past life, still went to the city to take care of Jiang Tong's daily life. After graduating from college, he originally wanted to take his grandmother over, but she rejected him for being too far away. In addition, my uncle in my hometown is still there, and after buying a house, he also picked it up for my grandmother, so Jiang Tong didn't force it anymore. "By the way, Mom, has he been here recently?" On the room table, Jiang Tong was eating a plate of vegetables with relish. This was picked by my grandmother from the field in the backyard while cooking, and it tasted a faint sweetness. "No, your brother and his team just came a few days ago, so they won't come today." Grandma put another piece of meat in Jiang Tong's bowl and looked up with a smile. "I happen to be busy with farming lately, so I can't leave." "Okay." Su Xiaoyan murmured and didn't say anything more. Jiang Shufeng only grilled rice next to him and remained silent about the rest. A meal was eaten quickly. Taking advantage of Su Xiaoyan's time in the kitchen to tidy up, the trembling grandmother pulled Jiang Tong back to the inner room, took out an iron box from a cabinet with a strong sense of time, and then took out several red tickets from inside and stuffed them into Jiang Tong's hand. "Grandma, what are you doing?" "I'll go back and buy some snacks for you. After all, Grandma has nothing here." She clenched her fists tightly to prevent Jiang Tong from breaking free, and her grandmother's expression was somewhat serious. "I heard from the family in the village before that the high school you were admitted to is a top-notch school. It seems that their granddaughter also got admitted, and the whole family is extremely happy. After thinking about it, my grandmother doesn't know what to give you, so why not give you some money and buy it yourself?" Okay, then I'll accept it, thank you Grandma." Seeing that he couldn't resist the old lady, Jiang Tong could only accept the money handed over by the other party, while also reminding Grandma. "By the way, remember to eat the things my dad sent me in a timely manner. There's nothing I can't bear to part with, as it will expire and become a waste. Also, if it's really expired, remember not to give back the money just because you feel sorry for it. Go to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, otherwise you will have to spend more money if you eat it out and go to the hospital." I know. Faced with her great-grandson's advice, her grandmother smiled and accepted it, causing Jiang Tong to worry whether the other person had listened to her. "Forget it, let my mother watch more when she goes back to her hometown." Outside the house, old Jiang was smoking by the car. Upon hearing the commotion, he looked up at his own son. He naturally listened to the conversation between his own son and grandmother outside just now. After all, there was no taboo. However, at this moment, his eyes towards his own son were a bit more pleased. "I always feel like my son has grown up overnight since the last big fire. Grandma, Let's go then. On the empty ground, after changing the direction of the car, Jiang Tong rolled down the car window in the back seat and bid farewell to his grandmother. It wasn't until the little old lady's slightly frail body trembled and moved back into the room that Jiang Tong withdrew his gaze from the rearview mirror. Just after finishing lunch, Jiang Tong, feeling a bit sleepy, curled up and was about to squint in the back seat for a while. As a result, I saw a somewhat familiar figure standing on the roadside not far ahead, thinking it was waiting for something. Dad, look at the one in front, isn't it Bai Qilan? Who? Aunt Bai's daughter. Haven't you seen her before? Oh, I remember. Are you waiting for the bus? Go and ask. So Bai Qilan, who was waiting for the car on the roadside, saw a small car slowly stopping in front of her. Just as she was puzzled, the car window in the back seat rolled down, revealing a familiar face and greeting her with a smile. Bai Qilan, what a coincidence. Chapter 7. Recognized you at first sight. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Bai Qilan didn't know why she got into Jiang Tong's car in a daze. After hearing that she was waiting for the car to return to the city here, Jiang Tong didn't say a word and got down to the trunk with the bag filled with peaches next to her, and then directly let her get on the car. At that time, people were all in a hurry to cry. This boy made a decision for her without asking for her opinion. Just looking at the three gazes staring at her in the car, Bai Qilan knew that it was already difficult to refuse the other party at this moment. After whispering his gratitude, he carefully rubbed the soles of his shoes on the roadside and sat in the back seat of the car. By the way, Bai Qilan, I heard you are also studying at Qingqing No. 1 Middle School. Su Xiaoyan's voice suddenly came from the front row, startling Bai Qilan. Yes. Yes, Auntie. That's a good relationship. In the future, you and my family Xiaotong will be classmates. If there's anything you need, just come to him. No, don't be so troublesome, Auntie. Sitting in the back row, Bai Qilan awkwardly withdrew her legs and sat there cautiously, afraid of touching anything inside the car. It's okay, no need to be polite. They are all neighbors of the same community, and your mother and I are also acquaintances. By the way, why are you waiting for a car here? My grandparents live here. Grandparents. So you. Faced with Su Xiaoyan's series of questioning, Bai Qilan clearly couldn't bear it anymore, and her fair forehead began to sweat. Now she deeply regrets why she got into Jiang Tong's car in a daze just now. Fortunately, someone helped her out at this moment. Mom. Jiang Tong interrupted his mother in a loud voice, you're not checking your household registration. Why are you asking so many questions? You child, I'll just ask a few questions. Su Xiaoyan muttered a few words, but she didn't keep asking like before. Bai Qilan breathed a sigh of relief and quietly cast a grateful gaze towards the boy sitting on the other side, but he didn't want to face the gaze that Jiang Tong was looking at, and his small face suddenly turned red. He quickly turned his head to look outside the window. He won't notice me looking at him, will he? This little gesture naturally didn't dodge Jiang Tong's eyes as he sat close, and he didn't have any special thoughts about it. He just felt a hint of humor in his heart. This little girl is really shy. Then he turned his gaze back to the scenery of the farmland outside the window. On the following journey, the atmosphere inside the car was relatively quiet, and only two adults in the front row could occasionally chat. However, it may be because there are two children in the car, so many topics are just superficial. Jiang Tong didn't interrupt, just listened quietly there. He enjoys the current scene very much. Just this scene, in the eyes of Bai Qilan who fell on the side, was another scene. In her eyes, Jiang Tong sat there, quietly looking at the uncle and aunt in front of her. She is completely different from those restless boys she has seen before. It's a bit strange that the other person occasionally shows a smile. Although she was also by her side, she didn't hear anything funny. Thank you, uncle and auntie, for bothering you all. After hitting the downstairs of the community, Bai Qiran was politely thanking Jiang Tong's parents. It's okay, it's okay. What's the trouble here? Jiang Shufeng waved his hand. Actually, if it weren't for my kid seeing you on the roadside at first glance, I almost wouldn't have seen you. Ah. Bai Qiran was taken aback at the words and turned to look at Jiang Tong, who was picking up something from the trunk of the car and walking towards a few people. Dad, why don't you go park first? I'll help Bai Qiran get her things up. Jiang Tong was currently holding the large bag filled with peaches from Bai Qiran, which weighed quite a bit. No need, I'll do it myself. Upon seeing this, Bai Qiran hurriedly went up to bring the things over, but was easily dodged by Jiang Tong and turned around to walk upstairs. Anyway, it's also on the way, so don't compete with me. The girl had no choice but to follow the other person into the residential building one by one. By the way, it seems like I haven't seen you go out these past few days. Did something happen? In the pitch-black corridor, Jiang Tong suddenly spoke up. Although he didn't know Bai Qiran in his past life, Bai Yi still left a strong impression in his heart. For this reason, Jiang Tong still hopes to help others as much as possible in this world. After all, based on the occasional leaks from her parents, it seems that Bai's family is not living an easy life. Ah. No. No. Bai Qiran's voice came from behind and then cautiously explained. I have been living with my grandparents for the past 2 days, and it happened that there was some noise here at night that I couldn't sleep. Oh, no wonder, Jiang Tong understood clearly. There is a square near the community, and in the past 2 years, it has coincided with the popularity of square dancing driven by the national sports trend. A bunch of square dancing aunties would fuss over there until late at night every day, and the sound of their songs and horns was deafening. No wonder the last time I saw this girl, she was sleeping with earplugs on. Perhaps Aunt Bai was worried about her daughter being alone at home due to the last fire, so she decided to let her go back and live with her grandparents while there were still a few days left for school. Alright, here we are. Quickly, the two of them arrived at the 6th floor. Bai Qiran took out the key from her pocket and quickly opened the door, then sideways let Jiang Tong, who was holding something, enter the room. I'll leave the things here. If it's okay, I'll leave first. He placed the bag in his hand on the table in the living room, and Jiang Tong was about to leave, but was stopped by Bai Qiran with a red face. In Jiang Tong's inexplicable gaze, the other party took out a new bag, carefully picked out several large and red peaches, put them in the bag, and handed them to Jiang Tong. Take this back and eat it. Jiang Tong looked at the bag in her hand and then at Bai Qiran, whose hands were intertwined in front of her, restlessly stirring her fingers. Thank you, then I won't be polite, said Zhaozuiyuan.com around 8 or 9 p.m., after taking a shower. Jiang Tong entered her own room, nibbling on the splashing peach in her hand while flipping through the information book for her first year of high school. Over the past few days, Jiang Tong feels like she has gradually regained the state she used to be in high school. Dong dong dong, come in. The door was pushed open, and old Jiang walked in. At a glance, he saw his own son holding a reference book, and his face suddenly lit up with joy. Dad, what's up with you? Jiang Tong waited for a long time, but the other party didn't speak. She looked up and saw her father standing there foolishly, and couldn't help but ask a question. Cough. It's okay, just chat casually. Jiang Shufeng let out a dry cough. Originally, he wanted to take advantage of the upcoming school year and talk to his own son about studying, so that he wouldn't be as playful as before in the future. As a result, it seems that this posture is not very necessary anymore. Looking at his own son's strange gaze, Jiang Shufeng, who was somewhat embarrassed, could only try to shift the topic. By the way, aren't you about to start school? Do you want me to give you some money? Why don't you go buy some study supplies tomorrow? That's not necessary, having a pen is actually enough. Jiang Tong glanced at the stationery box on his desk and directly declined. In my past life, there were only 3 pens on the table at most, and over time, I became accustomed to playing light. But he really remembered that there was something he needed to discuss with his father. By the way, Dad, I have something I want to discuss with you. What's going on? I want to use the computer in the living room on weekends in the future. Chapter 8. Guess Who I Am? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Today is the opening day of Qingqing No. 1 Middle School. Because first-year high school students enroll 1 day earlier than second- and third-year high school students, so there are basically no senior students in today's school. At first glance, it's mostly the figures of parents bringing their children to report. Of course, there are also those who enjoy liveliness, and the whole family comes out together, along with grandparents. Jiang Tong was standing at the school gate at this moment, looking at the familiar gate and the dark crowd in front of her with a burst of emotion. In his past life, he lay in the hospital for nearly 2 months before being discharged, so naturally he missed the celebration of the start of school. Jiang Tong on this side was still feeling overwhelmed, and suddenly extended his hands from behind to cover Jiang Tong's eyes. Guess who I am? A pleasant voice sounded from behind, probably deliberately pinching the throat and speaking inaccurately, but with a clear sense of pride in the tone. Except for a moment of panic at first, Jiang Tong quickly realized the familiar smell at the tip of her nose. Is it summer and autumn? No, guess again. Oh. Are you Chang Feifei? Jiang Tong, you are indeed a fool, accompanied by a dissatisfied scolding. Jiang Tong felt his eyes lit up again, and a tall ponytail girl was standing in front of him in a lively manner. But at this moment, the other party was gritting their silver teeth tightly, with a clear expression of dissatisfaction in their eyes. So it's you, Joey. Jiang Tong put on a surprised expression. Why are you also at Qingqing No. 1 Middle School? Your behavior is too fake. Seeing Jiang Tong's perfunctory appearance, Xiao Yi snorted in dissatisfaction. But now she wanted to question who Jiang Tong Gang had just mentioned as the two of them, but as she scanned the corner of her eye towards the parents of the two who were talking not far away, she could only mutter discontentedly. Bad guys. What are you saying? Say you have no conscience. Xiao Yi rolled her eyes at Jiang Tong in dissatisfaction. I just met a few days ago, and I brought you a gift. However, it's only been a few days now and you can't even recognize me. What's wrong with you? Jiang Tong couldn't help but laugh and cry. It felt like she had become a heartless person when she said these words. Alright, don't get angry. I just knew it was you, but I was just teasing you later. Really, upon hearing these words, Joey's eyes lit up, and the gloom in her heart disappeared for the most part, but her mouth still refused to soften. I don't believe it. You didn't even guess who I was just now. I really don't lie to you. Jiang Tong said with a serious expression. When you first covered my eyes, I smelled a jasmine fragrance, probably the scent of the hand cream you've been using frequently lately. And last time you came, I also smelled the same smell from you. Besides, you. Alright, don't say anything more. Joey's small face flushed with pleasure, almost wanting to cover the other person's mouth with her hand. My own mother is still watching from the side. This person doesn't know how shy she is, saying something about my scent. Think back to what my mom talked to me about the other day. Joey felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. I believe you now, but you are not allowed to say such strange things again in the future. Jiang Tong was dumbfounded, giving a strange glance at the blushing green plum in front of her. Isn't he just explaining with reason and evidence? What's so strange about this statement? Immediately, a few people entered the campus together, ready to go to the bulletin board to see which class they were in. Although Jiang Tong already knew which class he was in, he also walked over with the others. Why aren't the two of us in the same class? In front of the notice board, Joey looked up at the list of assigned classes posted on it, with an indescribable sense of disappointment in her tone. Isn't this normal? At least we have 12 classes in this class. Jiang Tong was not surprised by this. The annual enrollment of Qingqing No. 1 High School is actually not small. This year's new students are divided into 12 classes, and each class has 50 to 60 students. The probability of 2 students being able to get into one class is not very high. Glancing diagonally at the list that Xiao Yi was looking at, Jiang Tong's eyebrows suddenly furrowed. The class I am in is Class 9, which I have known for a long time, but Joey's name actually appears on the division list of Class 8 next door. When I first met Joey before, he was actually very surprised in his heart, but now this class list can be said to have put his doubts to the maximum. Even if one does not communicate with others in their past life, it is absolutely impossible for them to never recognize Joey in school. Not to mention that the two are so close next door. What happened during the 2 months when I was not in school in my past life that I didn't know about? What's wrong? It looks like you're not looking well. Joey leaned over with a curious expression on her face, and then suddenly felt a little confused. Yeah, I remember. You told your dad before that you wanted to get first place in your class on your first mock test, but it seems like the first place in our school is in your class, right? Upon hearing these words, Jiang Tong's gaze couldn't help but shift back to the class roster where he was located. The division list of Qingqing No. 1 Middle School is very unique. At this time, there were not as many twists and turns as in later generations, and students' admission scores were directly printed at the back of the list. It is called urging students. On the list of the 9th class I am in, my name hovers around the 30th, which can only be said to be average. But in the first place, it was a name that surprised Jiang Tong a bit. Bai Churan. This was something he didn't expect. Although he knew that Bai Churan was also a student of Qingqing No. 1 Middle School, he really didn't expect that she was in the same class as him. I can only say that Aunt Bai's mouth is too accurate. However, to put it bluntly, Jiang Tong was not at all alarmed about this. Getting the top spot in the school was a bet he had made with Lao Jiang before. A few days ago, when he suggested using a computer at home, Jiang Shufeng refused his request without hesitation. Jiang Tong naturally won't give up easily. After all, if she can use her own computer in the future, she won't have to go to her uncle's place on Saturdays and Sundays. And based on the feedback from my uncle, it seems that the things over there are almost completed, and Jiang Tong is still very concerned about this matter. So after a tug of war between the two, old Jiang finally breathed a sigh of relief, but he had one condition. That is, if Jiang Tong can get in the top 10 of the class in the first test after the start of Qingqing No. 1 Middle School, then old Jiang will allow Jiang Tong to use the computer for 2 hours on weekends. Jiang Tong said that the top 10 were not easily captured. It's not a problem to get the first one yourself. Old Jiang was also happy at the time, and immediately said that if you could get the first place, there would be no restrictions on Jiang Tong's use of computers in the future. At this point, the gambling agreement is established. Retrieving his thoughts, Jiang Tong couldn't help but roll his eyes as he looked at Xiao Yi, who was gloating in front of him. Hurry up and go to the lobby to pay the tuition fees. There may be quite a few people there. Sure enough, when we arrived at the lobby, there were crowds of people everywhere. After all, in high school, it means that the 9-year compulsory education has ended and tuition fees need to be paid. This is also one of the reasons why so many parents accompany their children to report. When Jiang Tong and Xiao Yi stood behind their respective class leaders, he noticed that the students who had paid their tuition fees did not leave immediately, but instead went to collect a colorful camouflage suit. Jiang Tong suddenly thought of something. It seems that when Qingqing No. 1 Middle School enrolls, it is necessary to undergo a 1-week military training. Chapter 9. Military Training. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 121, 121. Stand at attention. Take a break. Although the sun in September is not as hot as in July and August, it is also a time of scorching heat. After finally enduring the instructor's rest, the queue on the playground quickly dispersed, each searching for the shade to rest. The weather on this dog day is really bad. I even checked the weather forecast last night, and it seems like the sun has been shining all these days. If you persist, this is only the first day. The week will come to an end, and you can also rest well on the weekend. In the crowd, Jiang Tong twisted open her mineral water bottle and took a sip, listening to the conversations of the boys around her. In his past life, he had never participated in military training at Qingqing No. 1 Middle School, which made him feel good again. However, it was precisely because of this that Jiang Tong silently put the exercise on the agenda again. By the way, Jiang Tong, which girl in our class do you think is the most attractive? A thin and black boy suddenly approached Jiang Tong's side and asked with a somewhat contemptuous tone. Teenagers who have just entered high school are mostly in their prime of life, so naturally they cannot avoid such topics. What do you think? Jiang Tong glanced at the boy beside her and instead threw the problem back. Zhuang Qi, one of Jiang Tong's few friends in high school during his previous life. This kid can say with his mouth open that although he can be a bit cheap at times, he is indeed very enthusiastic, so his popularity in the class has always been quite good. Oh, I think Tang Jingyu looks the best. Zhuang Qi spoke of this as if he had opened the barrier and began to speak endlessly. And it's not just her, actually Lin Xia and Su Xinyue are also very good looking, especially Su Xinyue, who is not only tall but also very. While speaking, Zhuang Qi placed his right hand in mid-air and made a half-arc with his palm in the air. At the same time, give Jiang Tong a, you understand, look. Hey, what if I go up and talk to someone? Following Zhuang Qi's gaze, Jiang Tong's gaze unconsciously drifted towards the circle where the girls gathered. Tang Jingyu and Jiang Tong have some impression that they are indeed very good looking. With a long black head and a height of around 165, as well as small facial features, they can be said to satisfy all the fantasies of high school students in that era about their goddess in their hearts. Even in the second and third years of high school, there were often boys from other classes who came to meet her. But in the end, they all left in a gloomy state. And Su Xinyue. I don't know what scene came to mind, but Jiang Tong couldn't help but burst out laughing, causing Zhuang Qi next to him to stare blankly. You guy, is that what I said so funny? No, I just thought of something else. It's not a joke. First, he waved his hand to apologize, but Jiang Tong's face suddenly changed and he spoke with courage. Tang Jingyu, I guess you won't be able to do it. This one is too cold and aloof. I have already seen several male compatriots from other classes who have failed this morning. But Su Xinyue, you can give it a try. Really? Zhuang Qi glanced at Jiang Tong with some suspicion. You're not lying to me, are you? Don't believe it. Jiang Tong lifted his chin towards the girl group under the shade of a tree on the other side. You go try it out. If Su Xinyue doesn't talk to you, I'll cover your water bill this week. On the other hand, if I win, you'll take care of my water money this week. Okay, that's what you said. I don't know if it's because I've been interested in water for a week, or if I just want to find an excuse for my behavior, or if it's both. Zhuang Qi was like a soldier about to go to the battlefield, suddenly gathering his courage and walking towards the gathering place of girls over there. And Jiang Tong sat there watching him pass by, watching Zhuang Qi talking to Su Xinyue. Suddenly, Jiang Tong showed a strange smile. At the same time, my heart was silently counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2. Before he could count to 1, as expected, Jiang Tong saw Zhuang Qi over there suddenly turn around and give him a complex look. Jiang Tong could only respond with a smile. A few minutes later, Zhuang Qi came back with an extra bottle of water just bought from those ants near the playground. Maybe it was because he kept it in the foam box and felt cool when he got it. How's it going? Taking the ice water handed by the other party, Jiang Tong casually asked. "You're talking to me, and we talked quite well." It seems that Zhuang Qi's gaze became increasingly strange as he recalled the previous scene. "Why do I always feel like something's wrong?" Puff, Jiang Tong naturally knew what the other party was complaining about. To be honest, Su Xinyue looks quite good in their class, especially with a pair of long legs and a height of over 1.7 meters, coupled with a broad mind that is the top among peers. The only problem is that this girl has just returned from the Northeast to attend high school. What impressed Jiang Tong the most was the other person's accent full of Northeastern flavor, as well as the voice that could overwhelm the whole class. I still remember the first time I communicated with Su Xinyue in my previous life due to some academic reasons, when the other person opened their mouth and left Jiang Tong stunned for a while. But the other person's personality is indeed very good. Even if someone makes a few irrelevant jokes on her, she won't get angry, and she is also very generous. So if there is anyone in the class who has the highest favorability among the boys, it is definitely not Tang Jingyu, the class flower at that time, but this straightforward Northeastern girl. It can be said that most of the class liked this girl who came back from Northeast China very much at that time. Of course, it's the kind of liking towards brothers. Ah! Zhuang Qi suddenly let out a leisurely sigh. The ancients never deceived me, it's really something that can be seen from afar but not talked about nearby. That's about it. Jiang Tong laughed and cursed at the other person, then stood up from the ground and patted the pants that were stained with some dust. "Hey! What are you going to do? Say hello to acquaintances." Casually waving his hand behind him, Jiang Tong walked towards the girl group under Zhuang Qi's gaze. It seems that Jiang Tong walked over, and the small group of girls who were originally surrounded by birds and swallows suddenly quieted down. In fact, in some aspects, girls are just like boys. Boys like to discuss which girl in the class is more attractive, and girls are no exception. Because of this, Jiang Tong, who had already inherited the high-quality genes of the Lao Jiang family, naturally attracted the attention of many girls. "Sasha, look at it." In the crowd, Li Xiaqiu suddenly shook the body of the girl next to her, gesturing excitedly to look in the direction of Jiang Tong. "This is always the 10th one, right? You're about to lose. Don't forget to treat me to ice cream after school. I want to eat the one across from the south gate. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. You said the same thing when that boy came just now." Lin Shasha looked up and glanced at Jiang Tong, who was still holding mineral water in her hand. "But don't even mention it, this guy actually brought something over, much better than the previous few, and he looks very good. Why don't you consider Jingyu? You two are all bored." Tang Jingyu pretended to be angry and knocked on their heads, but they didn't know what was going on. Since a boy kept asking for his contact information in the morning, these two even started to bet on whether there would be more than 10 boys coming to him today. However, the three of them have known each other since middle school and their relationship has always been good. Tang Jingyu is also very helpless about this and can only let them go. "Well, don't be angry. Jingyu, we'll go eat ice together later. Anyway, Sasha's treat. Hey, I haven't lost yet. You just have to be tough. If it weren't for that boy coming over and looking for Su Xinyue, you would have lost long ago." It seems like recalling the scene just now, Li Xiaqiu's face remained unchanged. "I doubt if that boy has a bad eye. Even though our family's Jingyu is so beautiful, he actually approached Su Xinyue. Maybe they like Su Xinyue's number one. Humph, isn't it just a little bigger? Our face is not as beautiful as our family's quiet rain. Cough, stop talking, they're coming over." The two of them quickly stopped discussing this matter. Tang Jingyu looked up at Jiang Tong, who was getting closer and closer, and sighed in his heart. They were already ready to get up. However, to the surprise of the three, the boy in front of them turned to the right as he was approaching them, and turned to another figure not far from them. Chapter 10. One wiping the coolness that refreshes the heart and spleen. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. What are you looking at so mesmerizing? The sudden sound startled Baichuran, who was lost in thought. Ah! Subconsciously, she wanted to look up and see who it was, but accidentally exerted too much force. Baichuran fell straight back, scared, and let out a soft scream. Fortunately, a pair of big hands reached out from the side and supported her arm, pulling her back. Are you okay? Jiang Tong looked at the girl in front of him, who was a bit reckless and couldn't help but laugh and cry. When Zhuang Qi came over earlier, he noticed this solitary figure that looked familiar to him. Now, upon closer inspection, it was indeed Baichuran. Today is only the first day of school, so most of the students in the class are not very familiar. In addition, Baichuran used to study in her hometown, so there are not many middle school acquaintances. In addition, Baichuran herself has a somewhat introverted personality, which is why she sits here alone. After all, not everyone is like Zhuang Qi and Su Xinyue, who are outgoing and socially fearful. Thank you. Thank you. At this moment, Baichuran also regained consciousness and looked up. Indeed, it was the familiar face. What are you looking at so mesmerizing? Jiang Tong naturally released his left hand that was gripping the other person's arm and squatted down beside them. Feeling the warmth on her arm as she left, Baichuran didn't speak and only pointed to the small mound of dirt in front of her. Oh, ants moving, that's a good thing. Jiang Tong immediately became happy when she saw the busy ants on the ground. Seeing the puzzled look in Baichuran's eyes, she could only explain a sentence. There's an old saying, ants move and it rains heavily. Baichuran suddenly realized that she had been staring at this place for a long time just now, purely to pass the time, and had never thought of this incident. If what students most hope for during military training is rain, it will definitely come first. Every year, I don't know how many students hope to have a heavy rain during military training, so that they can avoid the torment of instructors. By the way, here you are. No, it's not necessary. Seeing a layer of mineral water with water droplets hanging on the outer wall of Jiang Tong's hand, Baichuran pursed her slightly dry lips and refused Jiang Tong's kindness. Although I also brought a water glass with me, I sweated a lot on this hot day, so I was drunk in less than half a day. However, the ice water sold by the aunties next to the playground was too expensive, basically twice as expensive as usual. This makes her really reluctant. It's okay, take it, just treat it as my apology for scaring you just now. Jiang Tong forcefully stuffed the mineral water in his hand into the opponent's palm, and then stood up to pat the dust. Alright, let's gather quickly. I'll leave first. Looking at the back of the boy who was far away, I glanced at the cold mineral water still in my palm. In the end, Baichuran couldn't bear the temptation and twisted the bottle cap to bring the bottle mouth to her lips. A chill flows down the throat and slowly seeps into every inch of the body. A sense of comfort emanating from her soul made Baichuran unconsciously squint her slender eyes, revealing a satisfied expression. I don't know if I have felt the longing in the hearts of these students. On the second day of military training, there was actually a light rain in Qingcheng. Although the time was not long, it successfully exempted the students from morning training. At this time, in the classroom of Class 9, as the class had not yet officially started, after Lao Hu said, self-study, he left the classroom directly. So soon the whole classroom was filled with whispers. Hey, Jiang Tong, let me tell you something secretly. Zhuang Qi, who was sitting next to him, suddenly leaned over and raised an eyebrow at Jiang Tong. What's going on? Jiang Tong was flipping through the compulsory 2 math textbooks in his hand, without looking up. Although this life was not difficult for him because he had not experienced the fire that caused disfigurement, even if he wanted to make more friends, Jiang Tong would not deliberately approach his classmates who had average relationships in the previous life. He won't deliberately try to please anyone, but he won't hold a grudge against anyone because of some conflicts in his past life. Let me tell you, when I first went to the bathroom, I met a particularly beautiful girl who was even more beautiful than Tang Jingyu. Zhuang Qi's tone was as if he had discovered a secret, sneaking up to Jiang Tong. Isn't that normal? After all, there are still quite a few girls in our school, so there must be some pretty ones. No, it's not important. What's important is what I discovered later. After speaking, Zhuang Qi didn't rush to continue, but instead stopped to see Jiang Tong's reaction. Unfortunately, Jiang Tong still sat there unmoved, flipping through the book on his own. Zhuang Qi waited there for a long time but instead became anxious for himself. No, Jiang Tong, we haven't had class yet. Why are you just holding on to the book and nibbling non-stop? Don't you look tired without the teacher teaching you? Zhuang Qi expressed deep disgust towards his friend's single-minded attitude of reading only the books of sages. Aren't you curious about what I've discovered? I'll just flip through it casually to deepen my impression, so that class will be much easier then. Jiang Tong casually took a pen and started calculating next to several example questions in the textbook. Zhuang Qi's eyes twitched as he looked at them. Besides, I'm naturally a bit curious about what you're saying, but you can't help but say it, so I'll just wait and listen. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, you guy. Zhuang Qi was so angry by Jiang Tong's appearance that he suddenly felt a bit disheartened. Do you remember the girl I mentioned who is even more beautiful than Tang Jingyu? She seems to be from our class. Oh. Jiang Tong's hand paused for a moment without any trace, and his gaze glanced towards a corner before flipping to the next page. So you didn't go up and ask the other person's name. Their class has never introduced themselves so far, so there is still a large group of people in the class who are unfamiliar with each other, and I don't know what the homeroom teacher from class 9, Lao Hu, thinks. The problem lies here. At first, I didn't think the other party was from our class. Zhuang Qi looked somewhat unattainable as he lay on the table. When I found out, I couldn't find the other party anymore. Moreover, these girls were all wearing military training uniforms, and I couldn't approach them one by one to see which one it was. Looking at Zhuang Qi's appearance, Jiang Tong felt a bit strange. Why are you paying so much attention to these female classmates in class? Are you looking for a partner? In his past life, he remembered that Zhuang Qi had never been in love during high school. Zhuang Qi changed his face and weakly waved his hand towards Jiang Tong. Hey, dating is not the key point, and I'm not a handsome guy like you. Finding a partner may be difficult, but I still have this kind of self-awareness. Why are you so concerned about it? Jiang Tong looked curiously at her desk mate. Although it's not necessary to have a girlfriend, who wouldn't want to meet more beautiful opposite-sex people? Zhuang Qi chuckled. At least it can make me feel happy. 6.